Hi, everybody. Welcome back to HR. Are you listening? Today we have a great guest speaker. This is someone that I met during my amazing career path, and it was an internship for a company when I was doing my master program. She was someone who I briefly met, but made a huge impact. Someone that I actually kind of admire her for her leadership skills when she show up in my life. Even though we spoke a little bit, she gave me some guidance and just I appreciate her for who she is. With no further ado, let me introduce you guys, Holly Paine Magnuson. Hi,
Hey, Marta. It's so good to see you again.
how are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. It's just, it's so fun to reconnect. And yeah, remember that time. It was brief, but like, it feels like it was yesterday too. Like, I feel like I just saw you and it's been a few years. So,
Yeah, it was like back in 2022. You know what? Something that I when I met you, it strike for me was your leadership skills, like how you present yourself very humble and willing to assist. I was an intern, so a lot of times interns have like this weird relationship with like higher leaders. But you came across helpful, and it looked like you knew how to take care of me and how to take care of any intern actually, because we had another friend of us.
mhm.
And so, yeah, I'm so happy that you're here. I'm honored, to be honest.
Oh, excited to be here. It's been so fun to watch like the different episodes and see all the different, people you've been talking to. So I love keeping track of that.
Yeah. Well, can you please introduce yourself? Who is Holly?
That's a loaded question. I'll give you whatever answers on the top of my head, and then you can ask questions about it.
Go for it.
I'm a wife, I'm a mom, and I'm an HR leader, probably in that order, right? My amazing husband and I have been together for 20 years, known each other for about 30, and we moved down to South Florida. That's where we live right now. I'm not from South Florida. I'm from West Virginia, the great state of West Virginia. That has moved all over. But the last 9 years we've been down here. My daughter's now finishing up her first year of college. So we're empty nesters, which makes me feel really old. I don't know how that happened. But we moved down here and I've had a lot of different experiences in HR. Started at GE in their global HR leadership program right out of my grad school program. So I remember as you were going through yours, I think that's probably why we connected because I remember that so well. But went through GE and had a lot of great experiences primarily in the Fortune 500 for the first 15, well, maybe 10, 15 years of my life through General Mills, through 𝗪𝗓, through the company or Connectivity, and did a whole lot of things until my husband and I ended up deciding to make a major life change and go into leadership at a nonprofit, which was totally different. Moved down to South Florida, took a 70% pay cut overall. And moved to one of the most expensive places to live in the United States, right? But we did it, and we planned for a while to do it. Completely changed trajectory, and then have since done some consulting. I've ended up back in the Fortune 500 because I do think that's my home. But I had some stops along the way between nonprofit consulting. Actually, got to be the CHR of a small business, like a privately owned business down here in West Palm, which was crazy experience. Never thought I'd be a small business HR leader and probably won't do it again. But really learned a lot. And I'm back at NextEra Energy right now, which is another Fortune 500 company, leading HR optimization and exploring the extent to which we can embed AI and all of the new tools that we have into HR. So it is super fun and yeah, crazy experiences. I wouldn't have guessed that whole path. I wouldn't have planned it. And I don't know if I'd do it again, but I'm really thankful for every moment, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know what's funny? I'm laughing because it says so much how you are flexible and willing to take a challenge. But mostly how you say, like, hey, yeah, I don't know how that happened, but
Yeah.
that happened. And you're still in shock of all the things that you went through in
Yeah.
your career, not to mention to even, start your own thing with your husband and taking that leap of faith with you. I knew a lot of your global aspects, and I think that's where I really connected is you have very global, very diverse mindset of how you view work and business itself, because I mean HR uh, it is as it's a sort of form of business. Like you need to know business to be able to integrate it fully to the company. And then the way you talked about it, your mindset intrigued me because you're very odd in the pool of HR. HR are not that diverse in terms of like global perspective of how do you put it in place and strategically make decisions that are sound, rather than just copy and pasting. Because I think that's a lot of what people do is like, well, this works in this company and let me put it here versus you came across very well known, expert. I would be properly the word where I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. Like that's what HR with a global perspective should look like. Like this
Yeah.
person is telling me things in a way that resonates and it builds that portfolio or that credibility in my eyes of like this is an HR person who knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and so I asked you to share, some of your topics that you're going to be talking about. We are looking into playing the long game in your career, which I think is very interesting. I think that topic, personally, it um, is could be applicable to me right now because I'm still building my career,
Mhm.
and I sometimes feel like we try to cut corners or try to cheat ourselves or self-sabotage ourselves because we're not seeing the results right away. And you're going to be talking about short terms versus long-term wings, which I think that's super important. How to also think about risk, visibility, and growth. I feel that's super interesting. I think that the decisions that sometimes don't make sense at the time, but they're paid off. I think that's one that hits me very much. I'm looking forward for this particular part, just because sometimes I try to make certain decisions and people steer me away.
Yeah.
As an HR, I'm being very honest. Like I'm building my career, I'm starting to figure out, and sometimes people don't understand my decision making. You're like, why wouldn't you not choose that? That makes sense. I'm like, well, it doesn't feel right, or I think this opportunity has more value. Um, well, let me stop rambling and let you take it away and go for it. What's the
Yeah.
story?
Yeah, we can take it in lots of different places. But I think it's interesting. Starting in my career, coming out, I went straight through undergrad into masters, and I think you may have. Did you do the same?
No.
No, you worked. Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't, and so I think that was, I don't know if that was uncommon. It was about half my class in grad school that did that. Um, but I jumped straight into a leadership development program, right, at a very well known, right, very well respected. And it spat me out. Like once I was done with that, it spat me out at a level that, to be very honest, I think it was too high at the time. Like I didn't think that at the moment. I would have never said that, right? I was ready. I was fine, like taking the work. I was fine executing. And I was successful by all intents and purposes. But I had a leader actually who, I look back 20 years and I remember this VP of compensation who had been at GE a long time, and has since retired. And he looked like Santa Claus. He was like super nice and like friendly. And I just remember him saying, sometimes the problem with like you guys is that you come in and you're ready to operate at this high level, but you've never learned what it's like to actually do it. And at the time it didn't resonate with me. I was like 25 years old. I just didn't, I didn't get it. And now looking back, I totally do get it, because I feel like along the way, there were moments in time that I either needed to step across a lateral move to get more breadth, to really understand and get my hands dirty with what that work was. I had actually taken on several roles and gotten to a pretty mid-level, almost senior level. And in HR, I hadn't even ever had the sad opportunity to let someone go. I mean, that sounds like a weird comment, but that's like a core skill and understanding, not just in HR, but as a human, right? As a human leader, like you need to understand people and how to work through, those kind of challenging situations. And so I had to take a major step back. I had been working on all this strategy, all of this theory, all of these major programs and being very successful, but I missed a lot of the basic human elements. So I do think some of it's probably a factor in the education and the early programs that like I said, I would do it again, but I think I would have, if I would have had advice, right? Advice I would have known. I got it from that one individual, but it would be great to actually have some of those experiences more embedded, because some of those moves laterally, right? They build breadth, and sometimes even steps back. It's not necessarily, people may not understand it, but you're building a depth, right, of skill set and capability that now later I'm starting to see, especially in this new world of AI and systems, you really have to have a depth and understanding and the expertise of what we do in order to understand whether those new tools are actually going to work or not.
Mm.
Right. And it's exposing, I think, people who don't have that depth of understanding. So the thing the analogy I always use as we're talking, I'm looking outside my window in South Florida. So I have like all my plants and all my yard that I've like built up. So I have a little 𝗪 tree that really shouldn't grow down here because it's a little too hot for it, but I've made it work.
Make it work.
That thing, I got it when it was kind of decent and small, but it wouldn't bloom forever. And the first couple years, because we have storms and we have tropical storms and hurricanes, like it had no root system at all. Like you've got to plant, like, so think of a seed when you plant something, it disappears for a while. Like you have to build that really strong depth of root system. And I had it like tightened. I had ropes, like I had stakes, like that thing. And it wasn't until a couple seasons of the winds and the storms, like beating it back and forth, that it quit. It quit doing the wobbling. Like it would wobble all the time. And so now, finally, in the last 2 years, it's finally set. I've removed all of the stakes, right? It's actually blossoming right now. It's got like 10 blossoms on it, like magnolia blossoms. It's beautiful. But it didn't happen overnight, right? So I think that concept of depth, like depth of roots and breadth of roots, I value so much more now, 20 years into my career, than I did in the first 5.
I want you to kind of explain to people what it means, lateral moves versus up and down. I think that sometimes when we look into promotions and movement in the companies, we are programmed, or this idea that the only way you can move is up and down. So can you explain a little bit about that so people can understand?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in our world, HR, right? It's HR business partner, HR manager, HR generalist, senior HR business partner, right? Then HR director, then HR, then senior director, then and somewhere there's a global maybe that fits in there. And I was on that path. Like I was the one always wondering why. Okay, I'm brand new into this company. My predecessor was a senior director for the same role, and you're making me a director. Why, right? And your head kind of jumps immediately to, well, why is it? Are you thinking of me differently because that was a male and I'm a female, right? Or was it capability? And some of the real answers was that person had actually 15 years on me, right? And so there were some real honest capability questions that came. But then there was also some equity questions that came in too.
Mhm.
So I think I'm a lot less concerned now about that, and a little more concerned about what's the season I'm in, what's the skill set I'm going to get for this job, is it right for me? And is it helping me build a career path that is uniquely me? Because no one can replicate your career path like that's uniquely you. Like, Marta, you're going to have a career path that's going to be amazing, right? And it's going to be so unique to you. And it's not going to be something that I could ever replicate it. So I think building the skills, building the capabilities, we're in a different age that we're starting to understand skills a bit more, and valuing collecting skills and capabilities more than title. And I'm really excited about that. It's a little less title driven than it was maybe a decade ago.
Yeah. I think like one of the challenges is balancing out of formal education with experience versus as well title with like what is actually your responsibilities. Because you did mention that you work for you pivot from big companies to smaller companies, and then that's a whole different level
Yeah.
play game. So I'm the opposite. I've always worked with small companies, small medium enterprises. I think the only one that I actually kind of have like experience of corporate has been where we met, and I have always, I guess this is my way of thinking. It's like, oh, like let me go to a corporate because I just want to gain the experience of what it means. But to be honest, the more I'm moving forward with my career, the more I'm like, it's odd, but my comfort zone ends up being in a like small medium enterprises. And I guess that's just because you have to have certain entrepreneurial skills. Your certain skills that you were not going to be applicable in the corporate. Corporate, it's a different ball game. And like when you're talking about like, those movements in a company, where like being mindful, like, hey, what is it what I'm trying to gain with this job? Or what is it that what's my end goal, right? A lot of times younger generations like me, we're just like, we just need a job. and we just need we just need some sort of experience so we could move to what we think we want, right? That's another, I'll present that because you think this is the job role that you want. The title is what's enticing. You know, you do the, I would love to be an HR uh, um, president or something. And when you get there, you're like, oh,
Oh,
is
what
it?
did I do? This is it?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So like following with that like thought process, how do you move? How do you start making those decisions? Because you say you start, you know, being more intentional with those decisions. How do you start moving into that realm from I'm getting, you know, I'm climbing up the ladder, but there is no depth. I'm climbing up the ladder, but there is limited knowledge. My roots are not really
Yeah.
fully, uh, you know, in the sand. So how do you move that? How do you went through that process?
Yeah. I mean, that was the good part of the early stages, the early career experiences that I had. So that was the good part of rotational programs, right? Because you could go around and build breadth. Um, the more breadth, the more range that you can get in the first half of your career, the better judgment and wisdom you're going to have at the end. Like I just really fully believe that. So I think being open to being throw title out the window, throw all of that. I mean, to me, I'm at the point where I'm like, do I have the money I need to live, right? And do I like, am I happy? And what's the season of life I'm in, right? I just shared that my daughter's in college. It's just my husband and I, right? We're in a different season where I'm going after learning, and I'm like, what are these new tools? What are these new like? I'm learning things that I never thought that I would learn, right? I'm part of the borderline cusp, old millennial, late Gen X, where we grew up analog. And I remember my dad bringing home a Gateway 2000 computer, and I had to like prompt the DOS prompts to get the mouse in there. Like that happened when I was in middle school. Like we transitioned over to computers. So like we were the generation that learned everything by writing down. So they've done a lot of studies actually of like how it's impacted us because we still think by writing things down. I have friends who are like, I still need to take notes. And people are like, why don't you just type it down? I'm like, yeah, our brains are like, it's like learning different languages, right? So now we're on our third language, if not fourth, and looking for those kind of opportunities, seeking them out, being open to what does that mean? You know, as long as I have the basics in life, what season of life am I in? I've been in other seasons of life where that wasn't the right time. It was the right time to move up. Like I had the support. My husband stayed at home and, you know, provided, you know, was really there with my daughter. And I could go take that senior director role. And I was flying all over. I was in China for 3 weeks, and then I was in Europe for 2 weeks. And, you know, so that was a season of life for about 4 or 5 years. And we went full throttle, and I climbed the ladder, and it was great. And then we switched because he had kind of taken a step back. Right. And then it was his turn. And so I think recognizing the season you're in and what you're trying to look for, and it will change. You'll look for that new job and think, that's what I want. And you'll get into it. You'll say, why did I want this in the first place? So thinking of it in terms of skills, capabilities, and the people you get to work with, like the managers that you get to work with. I always tell people, and I'm watching it play out a little bit in some scenarios I'm in right now. We all do, where people are really over obsessed with the org chart, right? Where's the senior leader, and can I get visibility with them because they'll make it happen. Yeah, ignore like the real org chart of a company is who's talking to who, right? Is the knowledge transfer and the connection. So pay attention to what is not the published org chart and find the people that are going to teach you, right? Wherever they are, because those people are invaluable. And like we were saying before, like those people stick with you throughout your life because you can always go back to them and say, hey, can I give you a call? Right. And I actually just did that yesterday. I'm thinking of the company that we met at. There's somebody who I've stayed connected with. And I was just actually talking to him last night and just stayed in touch. And those are the people that stay invested in you for the long term.
Yeah. And so looking into like the actual point about short-term wins versus a long-term wins, then positioning yourself into that. How do you navigate that when now that you're aware of the importance of breadth and depth, building your core skill sets, acknowledging that that's the most important thing because even though you have made it up and you don't have the core base of things, eventually you will have like gaps that you need to really build up. Um, so that said, how do you start? choosing or making decisions when you say, "Hey, I'm gonna trade off this short win versus a long-term win." How do you want to start thinking that way? Like, what made you switch to be like, "Okay, I can do a trade-off with my wins?"
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, I've had the opportunity to go to different jobs in different industries, and for me, every different group, like we were talking about, small business versus large business, consulting versus nonprofit versus, they all provide you something different. So some of it is self reflection of understanding who you are and what you love to do. I do like to build things. I like complex problems, and I think that's why I gravitate back to high growth, innovative, like larger companies where you have to navigate through a lot of people and you have to start to move, whether you're in a whether you're in a titled leadership position or an informal leadership position, you have to somehow talk a group of people into going into a new direction, right? That's complex. That's connecting a lot of dots. So that's what I have a lot of fun with. I love high growth kind of businesses. So I've had a chance to do some more startups, right? I was in Chewy for a while, and like that was when it was booming, right? It was right before we met each other, right? And it was crazy and amazing. They were the darlings of the COVID, right,
Yeah,
pandemic. And I have two dogs that you might see here at some point, and love them. But everybody was buying from Chewy, and it was just blowing up. And it was just crazy chaos, right? Thousands of people were being added to the organization. So to step into that and figure out what talent management needs there was absolutely amazing. It was a high burnout role. Like it was
mhm,
one I knew this is not going to be sustainable for the long term, but it's going to provide me something that I've never seen. And let's just kind of carry this out until I know that the season has changed, right? So that provided me something very different than the nonprofit opportunity, which was a lot about influence and how do you drive a culture and how do you get things done through volunteers who aren't on your payroll, right? And how do you lead really well and care about people? That's why I say I wouldn't have planned my career, but I'm so glad that it happened because now I'm going, wow, it's like Legos. Like I've picked up little Lego blocks and they're all
yeah,
fitting together. And now I'm able to go so much further faster because I can pull on those
yeah,
different experiences. So I think about those different roles. Like every time you're talking to a company or exploring a job, like what does this give me that is filling this little Lego block,
yeah,
over here that I wouldn't get anywhere else.
yeah. I think like the short wins with the long-term wins, I think something that you need is kind of being mindful. It's the what's your trade-off? Like, what are you willing to trade off? Like in that aspect, you said, "Hey, if I'm gonna be working here, acknowledging this is gonna be a burnout." So you're willing to take a little bit of your wellness, of your work-life balance to push through this particular position because you saw some value, you saw some skill sets that you will never be able to get in other place. I think that's very interesting. I think a lot of times people, um, also, I want to point out very quickly the short wins with the versus long term wins. I think it has to also do with your motivation.
Mm.
So if you are motivated with money, I think that's a lot of times when if you're only motivated by money, then your wins or what you're looking into is always short term.
Yes.
Um, because I feel like, oh, like if I'm jumping from this company to that company and I'm earning 10K more, if I'm jumping to this company to another, if you're only looking into that, you're only uh I think in my own perspective, like you're looking at until like short terms. Long terms required more than that. You have to look more than what meets the eye. Like, you have to understand like if I stay here for 3 years, it's not money that I'm seeking. I'm seeking something that I don't had or I did not have in the opportunity. Maybe it's improving your leadership skills. And I think that's something that I feel like it's important to acknowledge. Like really short terms wins might not necessarily be the best for you if you're someone that really is passionate really for with your career path. If you're not passionate and you're just, you're motivated by money, then you also have to be mindful like at some point you're gonna get to this ceiling where your skills will never be efficient to do that job and then you feel like you'll be underperforming. I feel at least that's how I view it. I don't know what
Yeah.
you think about that.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I've heard it said like be really careful because once you get in the spotlight and you're at the top, right, you've got all the lights on you. And if you don't have a foundation, it will crumble. Like it's just a matter of time. I think it's interesting. So in finances, it's a very real part of life, right? I told the story of I was a senior HR director at a Fortune 200 company, big global role. My husband got to stay at home, right? I've always been the breadwinner. But then when we went to a nonprofit, it was a 70% pay cut for the entire total household. That was a long term. We planned for several years to be able to do that, to make sure we had, like, we actually had finances in reserve. I came and did that. And about 2.5 years later, I needed to change. Right. And because the season was over and it was a financially driven decision, because my husband had found his role in the nonprofit space, I needed to kind of switch back, but that's okay. Like we did that as a family. We made that choice and we made the choice for money. Right. But it was very real. And I have a college tuition that I'm paying right now. Right. So, and my husband and I are both in doctoral programs. So, three of us in college all at the same time is not, with no debt is like, it's a thing. Right.
Yeah.
So it's all, I think that's knowing short-term versus long-term, know the season you're in. The seasons all do add up. They do make sense, but they change. And so the concept of balance, I know it's been widely talked about. Everyone's kind of said balance is silly. It doesn't really work. And it's true, it doesn't work. But I think the trade-offs, right? What you choose to do, what you don't choose to do, your boundaries for the season you're in is really the better way to look at it. Because I can look back and see, 7 or 8 different seasons over the last 20 years, and they all made sense. Like there was a reason why that job or that move, that learning worked for us at the time.
You know what? That's a great way of seeing it. Balancing your decisions or
Mhm.
your trade up according to your season. Um, and I think we have talked a lot about the seasons, and I need you uh, to just trying to be mindful of people. So, what do you refer when you say what stage or what season you're in your career? What does that? Can you give an example? What does that
Well,
mean?
that's a tough question. I am probably interpreting it very personally
Yeah,
to me, right? Because I'm thinking of life, right? I'm thinking of,
yeah,
okay, when I came out of grad school and I wasn't married and, I could kind of go after, go after anything I wanted. And then met Josh and we get married and then we're trying to kind of figure things out and how we both work and how, who does the dishes, right? Like, I don't know who takes care of the house because it's a, filthy mess, and basic stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you enter kids into the equation if you go that way, right? And that
mm,
changes everything, right? And it's different when when I was traveling 3 weeks over to China and Japan and South Korea a lot, it's different leaving, was leaving my daughter when she was 2 versus when she was 12, right?
yeah,
They have different needs. So, particularly in the last, as she was junior, senior in high school, I had made the decision, I'm not, I'm not going to do that global travel thing. Like I kind of want to be here because she's never going to have that time again. But then when she goes off to college, we're a little more freed up. So
yeah.
I think just being open about that. And companies are really pretty understanding in most cases. It's harder when you're going into a company, but once you're there and people value it, I think good companies, right? Good leaders
Yeah.
will be like, yeah, absolutely. That makes sense because things may change.
Right.
And just keeping that open conversation. So for me, seasons have been very life stage driven,
Okay.
to be honest.
Well,
I'm sure it's
yeah.
different for different people.
No, no, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's like, what stage are you? Are you fresh from college? You're more willing to do more reckless decision making. If someone asks you, "Hey, there's a job in Spain, you want to go for it?" And you're like,
Yep.
"Well, I want to speak Spanish. Yeah, sure, why not?" Or you want to do like, "Hey, this a job requires you to do 95% travels in state. Like, are you okay with that?" You're right. I think whether we like it or not, our life, where we add in our life, what time or what season we are in life, plays a big factor on how we make decisions in our career path, right?
Yeah.
And so with that, I'm gonna go with the other one, which says decisions that did not make sense at the time but paid off.
Yeah.
Uh, I just thought about it was a good transition because it does come with that aspect of the seasons of life, right? Like sometimes if you have a kid and you make a decision of, well, I don't know, I'm not gonna I want to quit. Sometimes people do that. People are pregnant and they're like, you know what? The decision is for me to quit. And some people be like, why are you quitting if you have a kid on the way? So, can you elaborate on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest what I had in mind and thinking through that question was the change, right, from being a senior director of HR and then coming down into nonprofit because that was massive. Like I even though we prepared for about 3 years financially, everything, the doors open, the house sold, we got a new like everything worked so perfectly until we got down here. And it was like, what the heck is happening? I went from leading a team around the world of 55 people, right? And you knew some of like those HR business unit lead roles, right? That we did. And all of a sudden I'm an individual contributor. Nobody knows me. I don't know how to explain anything. I talk in this corporate language and they're like, who are you? Right. It was tough. It was really tough. It was tough for my ego. It was tough for just our family because we were in a different financial state, right? We were always responsible, but we were like budgeting pretty tightly just to make sure we were good. It was really, really different. I actually had a really dear friend, so I don't even want to throw this friend under the bus, but we'll keep that person anonymous, who actually just said, if you only could have waited, if you could have waited until you got that VP, because that would have happened for you. And this person was in a position to know that would have happened for you in the next year. Oh, that hit me. Like, that kinda hit my heart, and I was like, "Oh, crap. Did I do something completely wrong? Did I wait too
Mhm.
long?" Right? And I probably spent too long dwelling over that comment. Well-meaning, right? Like, love this person. Like, they had no understanding that that statement would hit the way that it did, but it
Yeah.
did, and I hung on to it for a long time, like, did I
Wow.
do the wrong thing? Should I have stayed? Should I have gotten a little more financial stability, right? Or just a nest egg ready? And I think I'm finally past that, although I still laugh at it and go, you know what? They weren't me, right? That's not my season. It was the right thing. Could it have played out that way too? Yeah, I think that could have worked, but the timing for me was right in terms of how we met the leaders of the nonprofit, how everything opened up. And I made the best decision with what we knew. And everything's kind of worked out. Like, my husband's great. He found his like
Place.
career, his
Mhm.
space. So he got settled, and now we're both like more equally settled, if that makes sense. Where he had given it up before. My daughter's in a college program she loves, right? Like, we're settled, we're good. I've had to step back, eat humble sauce, and do some roles that I was like, oh, I'm past this, right? I did this 10 years
Mhm.
ago. But I think that was kind of good for me. Like, I think it was good to just strip a little bit of the ego and the pride away and then rebuild and go, you know what? Things are different now. And I actually want to build this again for the long term. And now, because I did that, I think had I kept moving, I wouldn't be able to do the role that I'm doing now, which is truly, I mean, one of the things I'll give credit for my current company, they are amazingly advanced in terms of the
Mhm.
work because we're critical infrastructure, right? It's the power
Mhm.
grid. So power grid goes down, we're in trouble. So there is some major advancements happening. What we are learning, I'm in a position to do nothing but focus on how those tools are working and how it applies to HR. There's no way I would have been like, I wouldn't have the joy of having that role because I'd probably be, I don't know, somewhere else. And
Yeah.
I'm actually really loving it right now. And I think it's going to position me well for when that happens.
Yeah. Wow. Your story hits me into the core. Um, I've always this is a raw Marta moment because I have always said to people like I don't give an F what do you
Mhm.
think? Like it's with respect. So
Mhm.
I come from a place where a Latin culture where people criticize you and people always provide you with with their humble opinion, which I take it. I love that you give me your humble opinion, but it's up to me whether I want to accept it or not. And it's up to me whether I want it to let it affect me or not.
Yeah.
And when we work in the companies, I know a lot of people think I'm very assertive, like I'm confident. Boy, there's sometimes I have no idea. I'm freaking out. You might look at me like she knows it. I'm like, no, I have no idea. I'm making a decision based on what I feel. How you said, how how I feel is the best course of action. How I feel um, that I this is what I need. And sometimes there are blessings in disguise. Just because you decide to take a two-step back, it doesn't mean that it's not what you need. So you just said, "Hey, I took 3 steps down," but sometimes we need that refresher. It
Yeah.
keep us humbled. Like the reality is that for you to be where you at, you need to have some sort of humbleness. And I think like in corporates, it gets to a point where you forget. that human humbleness of, if it wasn't because of other people, if it wasn't because of you being you, human, kind, empathetic, and understanding that it's a hardship to get where you are. So as a leader, as an HR, I'm like, I get you. I get the person from the cleaning place. I mean, I have not necessarily
Mhm.
cleaned the place, like all the like a building, but I understand what it means, an effort, right? It might seem so simple, but you have to have some sort of humbleness. I'm not saying that from a VP role you're gonna go clean the toilets, but I'm saying like if you do something that you forgot, it's kind of a refresher. And in when people make comments like, like, yeah, if you should have, like, no. I mean, yes, but no. This is where I do the. A lot of times, people make comments about people's decision career based.
Yeah.
Like, if I say to you, like, "Oh, what are you doing, Holly? Like, you have it all. Like, what like like me thinking I'm assisting you by criticizing your decision. Um, I don't think that helps you. I think that actually hurts you because I am making you self doubt of your decision. And I'm pretty sure making such big steps, like going to something different, like a nonprofit, it was a huge burden for you to even make that decision. And I'm saying this with all the respect with anybody. I don't care if you're a CEO. Making comments about people's decisions of transferring or moving a career, honestly, that's if you want to say something or help them reframe something, you could do it. But when someone tells you they make a decision, be supportive. Like what it, that is the hardest thing for someone to do.
Yeah.
I'd like not only because, especially if you, yeah, not only because you are making a decision with a leap of faith, hoping that will work, and maybe by the time when you get to that chapter of your life, is not what you expected. Now you're starting getting the concerns of like, oh, did I make mistake? Oh, I should have been better off. But blessings in disguise, decisions that you have never even thought about that bring you more joy, more reminders, beautiful reminders of life, of who you were and what you have become, and reassess yourself as a leader. Those are priceless. And those moments in life are only to are only coming to your life to bring you joy and peace. It doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank. It doesn't matter how big of a corporate you're working in. Because if you are a leader who doesn't understand reality of how to treat people kind, of how to be compassionate and empathetic, and just appreciating every single job from like everybody that works for you under you, then I don't know. Then you feel like you're in a void. You how do you say it? You are in a position now where you work for a company that does crazy things that you
Mm.
had never even thought about it, and yet you're still learning and you're eager and you are the best version of who you are as a leader.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sorry, I went to a rumble, but I just feel
Oh,
like
it's so good.
I
I mean, it's so, go ahead, finish.
no, go ahead.
It's so interesting. There's so many places we can talk about it because it's so hard as humans to not make a judgment right on somebody else and say, I have a comment about what you're going to do because your situation is different than mine. So I think it's just asking questions. Like when somebody does that, what I wish that person would have done, because I think that was truly their thought of like, oh, you were in such a good trajectory. You're so talented. Like if they meant it as a compliment, right? They were like, you're so talented.
Yeah.
You could do even more. And then maybe you wouldn't be feeling like this stress. But what they could have done is, hey, take me through all the things that happened. Like, what was your thought? Like, what were you thinking? What like worked? How did this open up? Like, what made you jump and want to do this now? Okay, now I understand. I
Mm,
understand where you're at. So I think it's the consulting principle, right? It's what I learned in consulting. It's like you ask questions first, whereas business leaders, you jump in and you make a statement, and right. It's going back to each season teaches you something different. It's a different side of the brain. So I think that's what I wish would have happened, but at the same time, it makes how I got out of that, right? Because I did dwell on it for a while. I think how you get out of it is just stop and look around and go, what is good? Right? What is working? What am I learning? Oh my gosh, if I didn't have to struggle through figuring out and worrying about the finances a little bit, and then worrying about, do I really want to go back to corporate America, or do I want to take this consulting job? Like, what do I do next? I wouldn't know myself the way that I did. I wouldn't actually have these conversations with my husband that we're having, and we're trying to figure out, what does he like to do and what do I like to do? Because he gave up his career for a decade, right?
Mhm.
So I think there was just when you're under pressure, right? You get to have experiences and learnings that you wouldn't have elsewhere, like when the sky is blue and everything is working really, really well. So
Yeah.
every season gives you something completely different, and you have to stop and be grateful, right? And be real, not just be grateful for things that if they're not working, right? But be very real and then go, okay, what am I learning? How do I take this into the next step?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with the statement of you know, uh be honest with yourself and uh it's okay to dwell to opportunities that you like, maybe you're Holly when she was 25, she was like, "Wait, that was my dream job and I missed it by this much." Um and you were like, "Wait, what?" But you're right. I think that's that dwelling aspect. I think it's not to be dismissed, but rather than to just acknowledge it, because that is an important part of the growth process of who you are as a career. Because there's everybody is going to be dwelling the what if scenarios, and especially if someone asserted you that that was going to happen. Um, but more than anything, I love that you said it's more about asking questions. So if someone comes with a big decision, be more curious about why they're choosing that path. And if there's anything that at least they can assist rather than, how do you said, assert your opinion and make a statement rather than trying to seek understanding. I think that's the one thing that HR people don't have, that curiosity of seek understanding.
Yeah.
They take things at face value and rather trying to understand and how to it's a puzzle. Actually, all employees things that happens in the companies, all strategic thinking, it's a puzzle. You need to find the right information. I need to filter the wrong information. You need to filter what is good, what is bad, what is unnecessary. Learn how to do that. Stick it up. Everything is resolvable. Everything is fixed. And if you cannot fix it, you need to be okay with that. And that thing is happening and it's okay that it's not okay. Um, but moving to that aspect, I wanted to ask this question because we're talking about personal versus professional. I'm trying
Okay.
to wrap this up. You said how to think about personal versus professional, and um, and how do you do that when making decisions for you? How do you start thinking professional Holly versus personal Holly? Because you said something about your husband and you having conversations, the needs. You said that, hey, we open our conversations to a more deep, a more depth of what do you want, what is it that you need, or what can we do? So can you go and ask, take it
Yeah,
away?
absolutely. I have a couple thoughts. One, the first one that comes to mind, it's funny. So coming from the consulting background I did, and Hogan assessments, right? Personality assessments that are pretty widely used in HR. Love that tool. Have used it in different companies. One of the things we would share is when they actually did their research and a lot of their personality assessments, they built the foundation of the assessments on a study that looked at people and how their reputation was, basically how they were perceived when they behaved at work versus at home, and the overlap between the two is about 80%. So you're not different, right? Like, and so we always use that. We would use that in training sessions, and I still use that with my leaders. Like, you're not really different, me at home versus me at work. It's almost like a volume knob. Like, you can kind of dial up a little bit more of who you are. You can dial it down, right? I'm not totally being like I'm a little on my best behavior in front of you right now, right? Because we're on a recording, right? But it's still me, right? It's not going to
Mhm.
change drastically. So I think get out of the notion, like integrate the two. When I first started my career, maybe it was a different era a little bit. But I had more people say, "Oh, I don't talk about family and I don't talk about things from one to the other." I just kind of tell people like, no, if you don't, I know it's the bring your whole self, but it's really true. Like, just acknowledge this is what's going on in my life, and I'm going to bring it. I'm not going to dwell on it, but I need to make sure that's actually part of me. So I think for my husband and I, as we were evaluating some of these different decisions, he went down a professional career path as a chemistry and chemical engineering major. He worked in a nuclear power plant. Like, he was kind of down that engineering path, and ended up being a stay-at-home dad for a decade. As we made that move down to the nonprofit, and he realized that that was more of his world, he has completely switched careers, like completely. So I think first those honest conversations about, yeah, I love that. Yes, that would pay a lot more money than what I'm going to do, but this is like who I am. And I'm like, great, I'll support that. That does mean I need to continue being the breadwinner. So if Holly had dreams of like working really hard, and I was the ambitious one, he's the really smart one, I'm the really ambitious one. So I was like, my career was taking off. That was great. But I did kind of always imagine there would be a time that I could like just step back and, not worry about it, because, it would
Yeah.
kind of, the partnership would shift. It's probably not going to do that right in our life. And I was like, but I understand and I get that. So let's kind of find a good balance. Let me then back off and find something that I really love to do, like this, like these new tools and this new kind of AI capability. I love new problems. I love innovative situations, like high growth situations. So let me go and find and be really like picky, which I feel like I can do now. That was different before, but now that I've gained all of these different skills and capabilities, right, I can come to the table and say, yeah, I'd like to do a different role, like an individual contributor role for a while, to come in, understand your culture, be able to step in to do this, and learn something new because I don't know anything about it. And if it's successful, we'll have conversations for other things.
Mhm.
So I was very real through the process of what I wanted to do within the constraints of what I needed to offer to him. So I think about it together. You're not a professional Holly and personal Holly. I'm not that different. I'm kind of the same person. And I'm okay with that. Some people are different, and you do need to figure out where your boundaries are, right? And we do have some boundaries, but 80% you're pretty much the same. And then figure out, work is such a big part of your life. I want my work to matter. I want the people that I meet, like you, like I want you guys to matter. Like, I want to put value into people. And that's what I want to leave. I want my retirement, like, to not actually be a thing, but my relationships to continue past that.
Your legacy.
Yeah, you want your legacy. And so, and I'm not even in that stage yet. I've got like a good 15, 20 years to go. But I think thinking that way helps you bring the two pieces together in a way that fits and doesn't feel like you're competing.
Yeah. Actually, I appreciate that you said about the volume and how you perceive this topic, because I always say I'm that old mindset where I say, like, Marta in work is very different than Marta in outside. And I think I do make a huge distinction. I put that volume for like probably one at work.
Mhm.
But I think it has to do cultural.
Yeah.
I think Latin culture, we have been introduced or taught that at work, you need to make a distinction, um, because work personality, you cannot be, for example, joking around. I do have a sense of humor. I do like to like just talk BS and just make fun. But I have grown to understand that I'm very intense. I'm very curious. I like to know people. I like to know what you think. How do you think? What's it? I really like to dig in deep into people's brains, and because that's the only way for me to see things differently.
Mhm.
That's just my curiosity. But at work, I limit myself because sometimes information, you need to learn how to navigate information. You know any better. You understand, like, information overloading yourself with information doesn't help. Putting too little information does not help. You have to learn how to thrive for the right balance at work. So I do think that maybe seeing it in the lens how you're presenting it, the whole idea of, be more authentic as an authentic leader. I put a quotation marks because that's very subjective, but authenticity, I think that way of seeing it, the way you present it, it makes more sense. I think I'm gonna try to apply it when I do oh, no, no, no. I'll be like, oh, let me turn it down. Let me
That
turn it up like to 5%, because I do think that way of seeing it brings value to me. And also it's not emotionally exhausting, because trying to make that differentiation can be a burden to you.
Yeah, it is. And it's, you know, on the flip side, I've heard people say, don't just go be yourself, right? As a leader, because that's not good, right? And I think that's why the volume analogy works so well, because I don't think there's a scenario outside of maybe my family, right? Who've actually seen me at 100% with no filter on. Like, there's still social constraints, right? There's things you should do and shouldn't do, right? Like, so
Yeah.
never are really at 100, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, and I think if you're ever feeling like, okay, this is this tension of me trying to be something I'm not, and I have had that feedback. I think it was probably 6, 7 years in. And I remember I was my first HR business partner role, and I had somebody say, it almost feels like you're trying to be something that you're not in a
Mm,
certain situation. And that made me go, well, that's interesting. I wonder who I am. Right. Like, it was the first time that I heard that. And like, what is it about? So it was a good friend. And I'm like, okay, so help me understand what am I doing and what are you making? What are you seeing?
referring.
Like, what are you referring to? Like, how do I figure this out? So I think if you're feeling that internally, somebody else is probably seeing it. And then you can kind of go, okay, that's not actually congruent with how I would want to show up. But I don't have to turn the dial knob all the way up to 90 or 100, right? I can kind of shift it up to about a 40 or 45, and then I feel
Yeah.
pretty good. But it's more myself, right? And people then see that and they resonate with that, and you make connections, and you're able to lead a whole lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to wrap this up, but I do have two questions. Very random, doesn't have to do anything what we have just talked about. The
Okay.
first one is for your nonprofit. I am love the nonprofit world. I'm very passionate about it. It's probably one of the hardest industries that people uh, know. And if you don't know, I'm gonna tell you, nonprofit is one of the hardest um, industries to manage. And just to do business in general, not to mention HR. HR is another level of that's like if you want to be challenged as an HR, go to a nonprofit. So can you briefly share with me something that stood out to you from the nonprofit experience? Something that you say, wow, this was a gem. This, if I wasn't because I'm living it, I would not believe it. Something that you say, it changed you to be this this Holly right now.
Yeah. The easy answer where my mind goes that we already talked about is the power of asking questions. So I think that's one, but the one that I think is more fun to talk about, since we've already talked about asking questions and the importance of not making statements, right? Because business leaders, I can make a statement. I can go in. I was trained to diagnose the situation and make a statement very quickly. So don't do that in a nonprofit. Ask questions. Ask lots of questions and seek to understand. Seek to understand why a fence was put up before you tear the fence down, right? Because the livestock might the dogs might get out, right? But I think the other one that I really learned that I wouldn't have had before is when you're in a nonprofit, you don't have people really on your payroll. You can't just go and tell people what to do, right? I have a team of 55 people. If Holly, who were 4 or 5 levels reporting up through me, if I said to go do something, they would go do it. I didn't have to work very hard for it. I really didn't, right? Because I had performance management on my side, right? I could set goals, I could set targets. They either did it or they didn't. When you're in a nonprofit, you have to persuade people to want to follow you. Your leadership stretch, your influence, right? As John Maxwell talks about, like it stretches you so much because if they don't like it, they just don't show up. Right. And there is nothing you can do about that other than try to call them and make them want to like you. So how do you do that without coming across as like, oh, please, Martha, like me, like follow me, right? You can't really do that. You have to build connections and relationships, and you have to inspire
Mhm.
leadership at a much deeper level. So that is absolutely number one, the thing that I learned.
So that's kind of like a respect versus likability,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You need to gain respect to be a good leader,
Yeah.
or show up that you care enough that they know that, hey, Holly comes here with the best interest. She's caring for us, but you need to gain respect for you to be able to lead. Uh, because I think like if you only focus on likability, it wouldn't matter anyway
No.
because there's no respect. There's no uh, they don't see you as someone capable. They just see someone, oh, she's nice. I like her, but it doesn't mean that will follow you because they don't see the actual capabilities, your professional capabilities. And the other one that I want to ask, it's now you said, because I'm very intrigued about your new current job, right? And you talk about a lot of AI and you talk a lot about, innovation and how it puts you in edge, puts you in your tiptoes. And you have to be like, you look so excited when you talk about your job. You look like a little kid who is like, yo, like this is the best feeling ever. So can you share with me something that you are learning with this new job role that required you to reassess your views of how you do business? Because you mentioned there's a lot of AI, there's a lot of learning curves, especially because of the company that you are. It requires more technical skills, I would say. It sounds like a lot of technicalities that you need to learn. Um, yeah, so I would love to know what is one thing that you think like, okay, like this is putting me on edge, or like this is keeping me on my tiptoe, but in a positive way. I want to say that this for me, I could see you as me. Like when we're in this situation, uncomfortable, it's a positive thing for us because it's like, oh, like it's a thrill trying to break the puzzle or or making it happen. I don't know.
Yeah. It's, I think the reason I love it so much is that every day I kind of don't know what challenge I'm going to face. And so still, everybody's in exploration mode, right? And there's certain things that you typically do in corporations, like building PowerPoints or doing templates, that every day I'm learning, like, hey, guess what, guys? I just figured out a shortcut to do all of something that would take us a full day or 2 days. And I just did it in 10 minutes, right? So I think that's the exciting part, that I also then look back and go, the hours that I spent in building board of director talent reviews on PowerPoints, oh my goodness, I could have years of my life back, right? So that's the fun part. The more stimulating part that you and I would love is there's a lot of it as we're trying to look at the HR model in general and the company's going through, and this is public, right, knowledge, or we're talking about as shareholders and pretty openly. We've got a project called Rewire that we're literally trying to rewire any process that we've had before. So the whole company has done a bottoms up brainstorming exercise, really. I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of ideas by every function and business unit of things we could do differently. And then it has gone through a vetting process, like of what's valuable and what's not, what works, what doesn't. So we're now in the stage that we have aligned on big ideas. We're now pressure testing those. So we're process mapping all of these processes. And it's for the first time in my career, and you're probably the same way, because I know you and I think pretty similarly. I can put the pieces of the puzzle together, but now I have a tool that I can talk to say,
Mhm.
help me synthesize this. And here's what I'm looking for. And here's the big idea. And it's filling in the gaps that normally would have taken me, like, it's not taking my idea and my thought process from me. It's filling in the details of the gaps that would have taken me a couple of weeks to like vet out. And it's happening so fast. So I'm feeling like it's not taking anything from me. I'm not scared of losing my job because I'm telling it what to do. But it's a tool that's just helping me build the bigger story so much faster and then pull people into the conversation with me.
Wow.
So I think that piece is really exciting. I've not had that before. I used to come up with the big idea and paint a great picture and then have to spend weeks coming up with the PowerPoint and the details, or what about this, or what about this owner, and just all of the
Yeah, all
tendrils.
the details.
And now it's just happening so fast. So I'm really thankful for that, because I feel like we can get to the fun work in
Yeah.
HR a lot faster.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I think that's interesting because what you said is like, it's not taking out of my job, it's
Mhm.
supporting me. And I think that's people misunderstanding about AI in their work environment. Ultimately you tell the machine, you tell this tool what you need. Um, I am actually honored that you shared those two stories. I think there's a contrast between um, Holly, who was in a corporate, right? Versus Holly, who was in a nonprofit, and Holly, who is now. I don't know why I see you like in three stages. The person that I met, versus the person that you just share a little bit about your nonprofit experience, which it doesn't sound different maybe for other people, but in my eyes, that's like you were in a blue book and then you went to like a bright pink book and then you are in a this nice colorful book. where everything went. That's how I'm visualizing this.
I
I don't know
love
if that
it.
make, I don't know if that people make sense, but those two moments in my head makes me very appreciative of you because it just shows how much growth you have and how much beautiful leader you are. I think there always are growth improvements that as a leader we could do, but it shows just your character. Mostly for me, it's that you're just showing up as a human. You're not here to how do you say you're not dialing it to zero to be like, hey, I'm professional. There's no errors. Rather, you just being, hey, I make mistakes. I'm scared.
Mhm.
I was frightened. I was unsure. I think that's when I feel people connect with the leader. You actually you help me see you as a leader because your human touches in the conversation. I think that's something that I want to remark. That's very rare. Not all leaders have that opportunity to show those moments where you make you feel like you're talking to a human. Because a lot of times we stay stuck into the title. If like people know your title, like oh, like no, I don't want to talk to her. I feel uncomfortable, but she's another human. She's just a leader
Mhm.
with a title, and more than anything else, she's there to support you,
Mhm.
the company. Well, company and employees, because I have these things where for to be a good HR leader, you need to be able to understand how to navigate the employee needs and the company needs. There
Yeah.
is no choosing. For the companies to thrive and create profits and margins and all this fun stuff and revenues, you need to understand your human capital and maximize it to the best. And to do that, you need to take care of your employees. Well, that's my philosophy.
Love it. So good.
Yeah, so let's wrap this up in a nutshell. Tell me something that you want for our audience to take away from this random conversation. I know this is a very unique episode style, guys. I'm trying something new, but tell me a highlight, something that you want people to get from this conversations. Anything that we have talked about, something that you say, hey, this is the one thing you should take away.
Well, I'm honored that you would try something new and do this because this is perfect. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's like, go, I mean, uh, try something new. I mean, try something different. We're in that age. I'm just defaulting to that since that's the theme. Because we're in that age, right, where the tools are new and the ways of thinking are new. And there's probably too much fear going around that people are thinking, oh, it's going to change. I don't know what the future is going to look like. Embrace it, have fun with it, go figure it out. Because if you go jump in now, you're going to be able to architect the future and not be left behind. So yeah, don't have any fear about it. Just go try something new, see what you learn, and what where it leads you. So maybe we'll just stay with that.
Yeah, for sure. I will add up that without risk, without failing, you wouldn't know any better.
Yeah.
And failing is part of growth. Like, and actually, failure is very subjective. But I just want to add to that, Holly. Like, what might people think that you failed doesn't mean like you necessarily failed. So just because people say like you're failing at something, that doesn't necessarily it's true. I would just want to point that out because taking risks, doing new things, it's get out of your comfort zone is beautiful, but the fear of failing, it's don't let it stop you from. So, thank you, Holly, so much for being my amazing guest speaker and helping me out to navigate this way of doing my podcast episode. But thank you so much, and I hope to see you in season 3, guys. Have a good one, guys. Bye.